What's up, everybody? As always, it is CALLOUS here, and we are back with the CALLOUS Draft Duel Semifinals. I don't know where this tournament went. I've been really enjoying it, and I feel like it has blown by, but we are down to only 4 drafts remaining in this entire damn tournament. We are really getting to the nitty-gritty here. Of the 4 players remaining, 3 of them will walk away with money. 1 of them will walk away crying, and just by being here, you've got 2 chances to lock up the money. So if you win here, you're in the finals, you're going to get first or second no matter what, guaranteed money. But even if you lose here, you're going to play against the other guy who lost in the other semifinal, and then you're going to play the 3rd place match against him with a whole new draft. So 2 chances to make cash here. Prize pool sitting 551 right now, pretty good. You guys already know the drill. If you want to donate, just click the PayPal link in my Discord server, which is linked in the description, and you can boost that up a little bit if you'd like. I don't keep any of it. All goes to the players. You guys know the deal by now. I want to get into the action, and we have yet another exciting pairing. Obviously, if you're this far, you're good. In order to get here, you have to have won 3 drafts already, so harder and harder to question these guys as things go on. We've got AustrianGeorge as player 1 on the left in red, Arctic, fittingly, blue, player 2 on the right. Let's go. And the first ban for George as player 1, he's going to remove Blissey, which has gotten banned more and more as the tournament has rolled on. It was initially let through fairly often and was picked as like a mid-ish first rounder, but as we have gone forward, this Pokemon has not been allowed to participate. It might just shut off too much of the format. It might be as simple as that. It might just do too much. It's too bulky. It has Wave. It has Bell. It has Natural Cure. It shuts off a lot. It might just do too much. It's not a win con unless you go CM Bliss, and even that isn't really a win con in most cases. So it's not a threat the way that Raikou, Salamence, Titar, blah blah. Not the way that those guys are. But it might defensively and just all around just do too much. And that seems to be where the head is for... I mean, at this point, most of the players remaining in the tournament, but as we continue this format after this tour, we'll get more and more of a sample size, go from there. For now, Blissey ban, pretty popular. This ban is interesting. Milotic going to be taken out. Does Arctic think that Milotic is the best bulky water? Alternatively, does Arctic really value Salamence and is planning on picking that up and thus wants to take the counter out of it? Is he just taking a general all-rounder that's bulky and resilient and good in almost every matchup, as Blissey is? I'm not sure, but I don't know that we've seen any Milotic round 1 bans in this entire tournament thus far, so this definitely already in this semifinal draft is deviating from what the norm has been up to this point, and I'm super excited to see how we proceed, and this is going to be another unusual ban. Fortress is a round 1 ban. Meta has really evolved as the tour has gone on, and there also might be an element of specific strategy against specific opponent going on here. One interesting thing that I would note about George banning out Fori here is that he, as player 1, as of now, unless Arctic bans it, is going to have the option to first pick Skarmory, and he's well aware of that. So he's putting Arctic in a weird spot. Either, Arctic, you need to ban this, or I will take it. And if you do ban it, fine. He'll just take something else. I don't know what that would be for him. Titar, Meta, whatever he thinks. Salamence, maybe, with Milotic gone. But the Fori might be specifically, it might be a little foreshadowing, indicating that he is very willing and very ready to take Skarmory if Arctic lets it through. And he does. Celebi, going to be taken out. So a ton of the usual suspects here. Again, Raikou, Titar, Salamence, Skarmory, Metagross, Gengar, a ton of the usual suspects are still out there. These bans are not super in line with what the rest of the tournament has been. And like I said, maybe they're better. These guys are in the semifinals. People that were doing this before them are not, so that's something. But this is already unlike any other draft that I've covered up to this point, and we're going to see some absolute bombshells with the early picks here. So George obliges, like I said, after the Fori ban, kind of hinting that he was willing to do this, but He is just going to grab the Scarm, which has been basically universal. If it gets let through, player one just takes it. Whether or not that's justified is still TBD, but that is the consensus at this time. Obviously, wildly powerful retaliation here, taking two of the best physical threats in the format, Metagross T-Tar. Can't go too far wrong. Also, in taking those, you make it kind of awkward for your opponent to take Lax. Kind of weird. I mean, Lax actually might end up falling lower than it normally does, because do you really want to take it into Scarm, or do you really want to take it into Meta or T-Tar? Like I said, as the tour has gone on, I've gotten lower and lower on Lax as a whole. It probably is still a first-round pick somewhere. Hell, I could even, I mean, honestly, maybe I'm undervaluing it. Maybe I'm overcorrecting, but, like, I almost kind of see it as, like, a high round 2 pick these days. Realistically, it'll probably get grabbed before that, but I'd be a little bit hesitant given the amount of power that's left in play to take it here, given what's already been taken. Every single one of the Mons already grabbed makes Lax not as good, though Celebi is out of the pool, so that's worth noting. And Special Walls in general might be a real scrap with both Blissey and Celebi gone. But these picks make a lot of sense to me. He's going to go Zapdos Salamence. I think the Mence this early, if it even can be considered early, is totally fine in general, and even more fine when the Skarmory is on your side and the Milotic is gone. The Mence is obviously going to be a terror against Arctic no matter what, even if he does take something like Swampert. Not only do you not have a guarantee that you get it in that matchup, you have to watch out for things like Toxic or HP Grass or what have you. I think the Mence is going to be a huge asset for George. Arctic is going to come back with the Snorlax that he is obviously not going to pair with the T-Tar. He's just going to have to hope that he doesn't get the Magneton matchup. And he's going to take Gengar as well, which is a poke that has not gotten to participate in this tour very often. It's been banned out more often than not. Obviously a strong pickup here, but again, with what would be considered unusual bans. I don't know about bad bans or wrong bans, because again, these guys obviously know what they're doing to get this far. But with these a little bit funky bans, we are going to see just really powerful things that are not normally available flooding both of their round 1 columns. And then we get to the real nitty-gritty in rounds 2 and 3. For me, the second stage of bans right before round 2 is where these drafts really get interesting. Generally, round 1, it's still fun. There's still obviously some variance to it. Like I said, these are weird bans, but round 1 feels samey sometimes. You see a lot of the same stuff over and over, and that's just what the format is. But after that, things start getting really, really wild, I think. I think from round 2 onward is where it really gets good. So the retaliation here from George, I like these picks quite a bit. I think it makes a lot of sense. So he's going to go with Aerodactyl. That's going to protect his Zapdos and his Salamence, and he doesn't want to give his opponent T-Tar Arrow. It's also good against Gar. It's also good against Lax. Got to grab it here. I think passing it back would be a mistake. This is a smidge earlier than most people would take it, but I really, really like this pick. I think it's really heads up. It's good against the Aerodactyl that you just took, so it's a bit of a protection pick. It's good against Lax. It's reasonable against T-Tar and Meta. And the other thing is that Special Walls are clearly going to be a premium in this. Blissey gone, Celebi gone. You're going to be fighting for the Registeels. You're going to be fighting for the Regices. We may even see a Chansey appearance. That's a Mon that's only been picked a handful of times, but does have purpose. And then, yeah, you might have to start looking into, Zapdos as a special wall, Raikou as a special wall, whatever. You might have to get creative, because when Blissey and Celebi get banned out, there's only going to be so many of them. There's definitely going to be squads for both players that do not have a proper special wall. Maybe we'll get a little Umbreon action later on. But yeah, the Registeel is not only good against your stuff and your opponent's stuff, but it's also prioritizing early something that there are fewer of than there normally are. In this case, that would be special walls. Also, Rock Resist, very much going to be a battle when they are splitting the premium rock attackers in Aerodactyl and T-Tar. So really like the pick in general. Throughout the tour, I think George has drafted well and has really demonstrated that he understands the format. Arctic doesn't give a fuck what I think. Never has, never will. Does things his own way. Not that he's done anything weird yet, but, he definitely has not been following what other people do or what I think he should do. And it's gotten him this far, so speaks for itself. So, Arctic concluding his opening round. He's going to go with Swampert, kind of an obligatory pick with the Mence and the Aerodactyl on the other side, and it's also a nice complement to your T-Tar. Those will probably be on a team. And then he's going to grab Starmie as well. Also makes sense, just flat out one of the best Pokemon available, regardless of what's been taken. But your opponent happens to have a Skarmory. And really, I mean, it can actually be good against Mence too. If you just treat it as like a bad Milo, if you just go bulky water, recover T-Wave 2 attacks, or recover T-Wave spin 1 attack, whatever, and full bulk, that can be a way to deal with Salamence, where really Arctic is going to need as many Mence checks as he can get, especially with Milo not in play. And then finally, George, love it. I really, really get it. He's going to go Regice here, again, monopolizing the already fewer than usual special walls. And he's going to grab Hariyama as well. These are, I think it's an A+ round one from George. I think all these picks make a ton of sense. We already talked about the special wall thing. I won't get super repetitive, but Regice, again, feeds into that and just already makes it so there's so few of them in play and so few to choose from Arctic. And then the Hariyama just makes a ton of sense as well. Again, Rock Resist, going to be a premium, and you're staring down T-Tar Lax on the other side. Yama's really good against both of those. For me, I think I like George's position better right now. Player 1 often looks a little bit better after round 1, and that is why Arctic is going to have the double pick after these bans, which is crucially important, so it's hard to judge immediately. We're still so early in the draft, all things considered. But I think George drafted this opening round really, really well, basically perfectly. It's an A+ on the CALLOUS approval scale as far as I'm concerned. And right now, and like I said, too early to really know, but as of this moment, I would rather be George. I really like what he's done so far. He's very in the moment. That's what I love about the way that George drafts. He's not coming in forcing a strategy. He's not, doing the Tyros thing. Okay, no matter what my opponent does, I'm just going to ignore them and take offense. He's not doing the thing that Arctic did in previous rounds. No matter what my opponent does, I'm just going to ignore them and take Spiker Spinners. George is a very reactive drafter, which is, again, the way that I prefer to play the format. And when I envisioned this format, cooked up this format, this is the way that I envisioned it being played. George is doing it right as far as I'm concerned. He's adapting to the moment, to the opponent, to the specifics. He gets the nuance, and he is adjusting his picks based on what's happening in front of him, and that is what you're supposed to do. And I think George is really, really good at it, and I love his draft right now. So, on the other end, so it's going to be on Arctic to ban, and then, like I said, he will get the double picks after this set of bans. Arctic wants Heracross to be out of here. I think banning fighters in general from Arctic's end is probably a good idea. Going fighters into George isn't as exciting when there's a Mence, a Zapdos, and to a lesser extent a Skarm on the other side, but fighters into you as Arctic are pretty strong. Heracross in particular is stronger than other fighters would be, since it can really, really hurt the Starmie, unlike, say, Hariyama. But obviously, just against the T-Tar and the Lax alone, fighters are going to be a big threat. They very well might get targeted down by Arctic, and the same thing I was just talking about with George, just being in the moment and heads up and aware and tuning your draft based on the specifics and the nuances and what your opponent is doing. That's what you're supposed to do, and that's what this pick is. And if he bans another fighter, then I'll give Arctic the exact same credit. That's what you're supposed to do here with the way that this is played out. Fighters are definitely something that Arctic should be banning out and or taking for himself. George, trying to win the Spikes War, has taken out the Skarm for himself, banned the Fori, and is now banning the Cloyster. I wonder how much of a priority either of these players are going to put on Glalie as we begin to already see the good spiking options. There will always be spiking options, but as we see the good spiking options start to diminish, because frankly, though they have been picked, you really don't want Omastar, Roselia, whatever. They just aren't good enough as far as I'm concerned. I understand that spikes are desirable in damn near any matchup, but at what cost? At running a much, much worse Mon, does it really justify it just to get a spike or two down? I don't think so, and seemingly most of the players who play this don't think so either. So there's these three dudes, the Fori, the Cloyster, the Skarm. We've seen Glalie love, we've seen Smeargle love. Those are pretty much the five that are pretty viable, and nobody really bats an eyelid, but As you go further down the spiker depth chart, it gets a lot more questionable. We've seen some quillfish. Not sure if anyone's picked up cacturn yet, but like I said, some of the like NUE spikers are, I don't know about all that. So on the other end, Arctic doing the exact same thing. We already talked about why fighters are good. He does it again. He obviously recognizes the situation. Fighters are not amazing into George. Yes, he does have the double Reggie, but there's a lot of anti-fighter for George. And more importantly, fighters are really good against Arctic. So these are heads up, in the moment bans. Totally on board. These guys are in the semifinals for a reason. I expect them to draft well, and voila, they're drafting well. This one would blow the mind of people earlier in the tournament. Raikou, how the hell did it make it to the final ban of round 2? That would never happen earlier in the tournament. People have been putting a mega premium on this thing. But yeah, I mean, Arctic in my Discord server main chat not that long ago was discussing how he thinks Raikou blows and is not good in this format. Now, granted, I would put a huge asterisk and huge grain of salt that anytime someone, especially someone who's still in the tournament, is talking publicly about how they rate things or viability rankings or strategy or whatever, you've got to approach it with a bit of skepticism, because do they mean what they're saying, or are they hoping their opponent reads it and it throws them off or it messes with their picks or whatever? Are they trying to play a mind game? Are they trying to be deceptive? Is it genuine, or are they trying to provoke a certain reaction? And it's hard to say. I mean, for the most part, Mons players aren't that hardcore and are being genuine, but there's some clever folks in this. There's some clever critters that play this, and it would not surprise me if every now and then some of those things are said intentionally and you don't mean them because you're trying to mess with your opponent's game plan. In this case, it seems genuine. Arctic, not that interested in Raikou. Maybe he would have taken it immediately given the opportunity, but it fell pretty far, all things considered. Probably the furthest it's fallen all tournament up to this point, I believe. And it is not going to be available in this draft with this ban. So now Arctic is going to have the double pick, and he's going to jump into it with Moltres. Good pick into double Reggie, and also Flygon. Both of these make sense. So like I said, into double Reggie and Skarm, Moltres is good. Currently, George really doesn't have a switch in at all. Kinda, sorta. Hariyama is probably the only thing. It does get thick fat, but then you don't like Will-O-Wisp. It also gets Guts, but then you don't like Flamethrower, so you kind of have to pick and choose. Usually, if you really want to counter Moltres, it's going to be thick fat plus rest, so you can handle both the status and just the raw damage. But save Hariyama, not really a great switch-in for Moltres on George's side, so maybe he will address that with some upcoming picks. Flygon, like we talked about, with Registeel, with Hariyama, whatever, Rock Resist when they are splitting the two rock threats in Aerodactyl and T-Tar are going to be at a premium. And like I said, the same way that there's no bulky water on George's side right now to deal with Moltres, it's the same deal. As the Flygon drafter, you got to look over there and feel pretty good. There's no bulky water staring you down. You took out Milo, you picked Swampert, you picked Starmie, so options dwindling for George in that regard. Yeah, there's a Skarm on the other side, not great for you, but by and large, Flygon a pretty reasonable threat, and like I said, the Rock Resist thing, very, very real. They're going to be back and forth with that throughout. George, I think this pick makes a ton of sense. Not only did he take two Mons just now, Moltres and Flygon, that are both not great into bulky waters, but also the bulky water options are quickly thinning out. So he's going to take Vaporeon right here, right now. Another reactive, nuanced, in-the-moment pick from George that I super duper agree with. And then he's also going to grab my least favorite Pokemon in the history of anything. You guys know how I feel about stupid Dugtrio. Here is the pick. Yeah, again, don't really like it. Good against Meta, good against Tar, not good against much else. I guess it's okay against Starmie, but it doesn't have that many targets, and it's easy to punish. But if you're going to take Dugtrio, pairing it with Zapdos is good. Pairing it with Skarmory is good. I guess you're as well set up for a Doug team as anyone is realistically going to be, so begrudgingly, and I don't know why he needed to take it here, because, like, do you care if Arctic takes Dugtrio? Dugtrio seems terrible against George. This is one pick that I don't agree with, but I basically, throughout the tournament, I'm self-aware enough to know that I've basically not agreed with almost any Doug Trio pick up to this point. So, is what it is. Guess I'm biased, but don't love the Doug Trio. Would have taken something else, but Doug Trio is going to be good paired with Skarm, paired with Zapdos. So, as far as Doug Trio is concerned, because they all blow, I guess this one's going to be somewhat okay. Back to Arctic. He is going to opt for Jolteon and Gyarados. The Jolteon doesn't stand out to me as spectacular. It does get the edge on the Doug Trio because it can outspeed it and Baton Pass out, so that's something that Doug Trio cannot effectively trap. It is a threat against Skarm. It can be a threat against Mence. You have the coin flipped option against the Aerodactyl. Jolteon is not going to break through Registeel or Regice, but it can potentially paralyze them or pass a substitute out of them or what have you. I think Jolteon is a general good mon. It's probably a little bit better when special walls are hard to come by, but that pick doesn't blow me away here. I think it's just, like I said, general good mon, general aggressive mon, whatever, rather than being a specific counter into anything that George is doing. And then we have Gyarados. Again, general good mon. I don't know that anything specifically here is prompting the Gyarados pick, but it is one of the overall strongest pokes remaining, and it really may be as simple as that. Arctic going a proactive route and just taking some of the best stuff. There you go. Gyarados, Jolteon. Two good mons, without a doubt. Okay, George grabbing a fighter here in Breloom, and then also picking up on Charizard. The Breloom, like I said, fighter options getting a little bit thinner now. Hariyama he grabbed earlier. Arctic double banned fighters here, so might as well grab one while you can. Other fighters still available are Machamp and Blaziken, and then it largely gets a lot worse, so we'll see how many of those get picked up while they're still here. But yeah, Breloom makes a lot of sense. Isn't necessarily amazing against some of the more recent picks from Arctic, the Moltres, the Jolteon, the Gyarados, the Flygon, whatever, but still against this core stuff, the T-Tar, the Lax, which are among the better win conditions for Arctic right now. And of note, Arctic, the Spikes champion, the dude who banned 6 Spikers in one of his previous drafts, does not have any Spikes right now, so that is interesting. But Breloom is, I mean, basically anytime you can Baton Pass to it, which he's got a couple options, Zapdos, Vaporeon, whatever, and you get it in where it can always safely Spore with no drawback, that's always good. Spore is such a broken move. I really, if they banned Spore outright from OU, I'm not saying ban Sleep entirely, but if they banned Spore specifically, I don't think I'd be too upset about that. It really is broken. It really is OP. Charizard, on the other hand, doesn't blow me away, but there's definitely the aspect of him not wanting to play against it, which is fair, because I think Zard is pretty good against George. It always is going to have some merit. You know, obviously it can threaten the Metagross, Focus Punch option on Tar and Lax. Stab Blast against anything that doesn't resist it is always going to be a threat. But, yeah, I mean, again, Zard is just a general good mon. I don't know that it's amazing into Arctic's team. I feel like Arctic largely has the tools that can handle it. Moltres handles it, Gyarados handles it, Jolteon, whatever, Starmie. But Zard is still Zard. It'll just always be dangerous, even if I don't think it's amazing into Arctic's draft. So Arctic, there we go, switching much closer to the Arctic that we all know and love. This is what I was waiting for. He's going to go double Spiker here, and it's pretty clearly, in my opinion anyway, the two best Spikers remaining after the Cloyster and the Fori both got banned out, and of course the Skarm pick. So Smeargle, Glalie, double Spiker makes a lot of sense. He's been picking really aggressive mons that pair well with Spikers, so I think he's going to obviously split these two guys up and have two aggressive-leaning Spikes aggro teams. Totally fine with these picks. Not clear how far either of these would have gone. We've already seen that George is super willing to ban out Spikers, so I think grabbing them now is wise. I don't know that they would have necessarily still been there if Arctic had waited too much longer. And George is going to have to respond now. George right now is sitting over there with no Rapid Spinners, and conveniently he banned out 2 Spinners, so I wonder if George now goes, oh shit, I need Claydol, I need Donphan, whatever. Donphan very well may be more valuable than it usually is, staring down T-Tar on the other side, but some people think that Donphan just blows. We've seen it both ways. We've seen it over-prioritized in this based on what the opponent has, and we've seen other people who go the entire draft with neither player having an interest in it. But certainly Claydol is going to be of interest to George now, and Donphan may be as well. He's sitting with no spinners against the guy who just took double spiker, so obviously going to have to react to that in some way. And the way that George is going to choose to react to that, I'm okay with. He's going to, again, take a fighter while it's there. These are his last picks prior to the next round of bans, so if he doesn't take this now, he may lose the opportunity, so fair enough, grab it while it's there. And he's also going to take the doll. He had the option of Machamp or Blaziken. I don't have a strong preference. I think I actually might like the Machamp better as George took. The Blaziken does have some issues into like Swampert, Starmie, Gyarados that maybe the Machamp might be a little bit better served against. So, yeah, he's going to grab the third fighter here. And in theory, he splits up the Yama, the Loom, and the Machamp into separate teams and has one on each squad. And probably going to be pretty well served for that. And then the Claydol is probably the best spinner available. Like I said, you might want Donphan specifically to go against the T-Tower, and it's reasonable against like Meta, Flygon, whatever, but it's definitely good against T-Tower, physical T-Tower anyway. But Doll is pretty reasonable as well. It's also decent against Gar. I think it's, like I said, probably just the overall best spinner available, and he's got to kind of pick and choose. He can't have it all, and like I said, certain things might get cut off with this next round of bans that's coming up very soon. So you only get to take two things before those bans. Make them count. What do you want if you can't have it all? And he goes for best spinner and third fighter, which is logical to me. Arctic turning on the counter spice. Love these picks. Porygon 2 and Magneton. Those are obviously both very targeted. P2 staring down the Dugtrio on the other side and functioning as a bulky water, which is again choking George out of bulky waters. And then Magneton, obviously, just a counter pick into Skarmory. But then it's also the Bolt Beam resist actually matters in this case. Now, granted, Zap and Doug might be together, but if it's not, you can wall the Zapdos basically all day with Magneton. You can also wall the Regice basically all day with Magneton. It'll be interesting to see if George opts to go with Skarmory and Regice together, which have the redundant Magneton weakness, and either pair those with Dugtrio, which I think is not the worst idea in the world, or just hope that that particular game you don't get the Magneton matchup, and then basically after that game you really don't need to worry about it that much anymore. But these are great picks for Arctic. These are pretty hard counters to some of the things that George has going on over there. And yeah, now there is just the dumb luck matchup variance factor where if the P2 gets the Dugtrio matchup, if the Magneton gets the Skarmory matchup, and there's no guarantee, but if it happens to fall that way, then yeah, George might have some problems. These are very high upside mons, and crucially, if you don't get the matchup that you're looking for, they don't blow. They just don't. P2, I think, is underappreciated in this format, though it is getting picked up more and more as we go on. Like I said, it basically functions as a bulky water, and power level-wise, I think it's worse than Milotic and Swampert, but like, I don't know. I don't think it's that much worse than Vaporeon, if it's worse at all. I think it's about in that power level range, and Trace is randomly quite useful, whether it's against like Flygon or Claydol to blank Earthquakes, or whether it's tracing Water Absorb against Vaporeon or Volt Absorb against Jolteon. I'm a P2 fan. I think I might rate it a little bit higher than most people do, but I really do. I think it fits in the bulky water subcategory in this format, and I think it's pretty good at what it does. Having Recover, like I said, most bulky waters in this format don't have access to things like that. So a Recover bulky water, if you will, I'm into it. I am. I like Porygon 2. I'm a fan. And like I said, the Magneton we don't really need to talk about. There's a Skarm on the other side. It's as simple as that. Anything it does beyond that is a bonus, but obviously the dream is you get it in the Skarm matchup. So, over to George. Interesting that he's going to be the guy who bans Weezing rather than taking Weezing into the Snorlax drafter. He must feel that he has enough against Lax. He must just not be that worried about it. He's got multiple fighters. He's got Skarm. He's got Immense that can be physical if it needs to be. He's got a Registeel that can wall it. He's got a Charizard that might have Focus Punch, whatever. He must feel that he has enough as it stands against the Lax and simply does not need Weezing. He's going to take it out of the pool. Arctic, I don't know why he banned this. I don't know what he's too worried about. I guess he just wants to monopolize the fast mons for himself, but I don't know. Let's say Sceptile was picked into Arctic. Are there that many weaknesses? There's the Pert, the Starmie, the T-Tower, but like, isn't that it? I don't know. I'm not that high on Sceptile. It is fast and it does have diverse coverage. I do like it quite a bit in traditional Emerald Open, traditional draft. I don't know that I love it in this format, but I can absolutely see the argument that just generic special attackers are just scary in this in general when the special walls are so few and far between. And certainly I could see George in the third round just grabbing like random Alakazam or what have you, given the fact that Arctic, other than Lax, more or less doesn't have a special wall here. So the retaliation ban for George is Venusaur. I'm okay with that. You've got triple fighter, so, and that might be the logic on the Wheezing ban as well. I think it might be as simple as that. I think he might just be taking away things that shut down fighters. He's got the triple fighter. He's going to spread them across his teams. They're probably going to be, to some extent, a core part of his strategy, as they should be. There's quite a few fighting weaknesses over here. T-Tar, Lax, Smeargle, Glalie, P2, Magneton, a lot of fighting weaknesses. So perhaps the Wheezing ban, not so much about the Lax as it is wanting to not get his fighters countered, which I can appreciate. And the Venusaur might be along the same lines, just taking out things that could shut his fighters off. He thinks they have a lot of value. Fair enough, hard to argue with. On the other side, Arctic is still worried about fighters. He doesn't want George to have a fourth one, banning out his third fighter of the draft. And like I said, what would be, if George were to take it, his fourth fighter. He's going to remove Blaziken from the pool because, again, he just identifies that he's a little weak against fighters, and George did just take out two of the things that kind of sort of counter fighters. So George definitely does have a good point here, and I don't know that Arctic, as of now, has done enough. Now, we pointed out the fighting weaknesses. He does have fighting resist. We got to be fair. Gengar's immune, Starmie's a resist, Moltres is a resist, Gyarados a resist. Now, a lot of these have asterisks. Some of these do not want to come into attacks. Rock Slide, HP Ghost, whatever the case may be. None of them want to come into Spore. So, like, it's not perfect, but it's not like Arctic is utterly dead in the water to fighters. I think George is doing something right, and I think after 2 rounds, like George's position a little bit better, but Arctic is not absolutely dead in the water to fighters. I don't want to overemphasize that point. They're good against him, but they're not the be-all, end-all. So as we go to the third and final round of picks, as we wrap this draft up, it's going to be George kicking us off with Dragonite, one of my all-time favorite pokes, and certainly one of my favorite pokes in draft. Big Dragonite fan, and also Regirock. So this man has the Triforce of Regis, which has been done a couple of other times by other players. All 3 of them genuinely good in this format. Love these picks, no objection. General Goodmon Dragonite does whatever you need it to do. Versatile, has Bell, has Wave, can be a DD sweeper, whatever you need it can be. Don't bring it in Game 1, customize it to your needs in Game 2 or Game 3, and wonderful things can happen. Regirock, good pick. There are a couple of rock weaknesses on the other side. General Goodmon, good against Tar, good against Lax. These picks make a lot of sense to me. Arctic on the other side, grabbing a bulky water while they're available. There is a Slowbro, so he's going to have a bulky water presumably on each team, and then he's also going to grab Alakazam, which is probably a scary poke for George and probably going to prompt some kind of Houndoom or Umbreon response. Doesn't really want to play against that. The special wall shortage we've been discussing the whole time, but when your special wall specifically is Registeel or Regice, you are very much vulnerable to Zam Calm Minding up as you switch in, and it just starting to fire off fire punches at you. And yeah, if you're low or if it crits or whatever, things can get really bad really fast. So I think the Zam is a legit threat against George, and if I were in his position, I would respond immediately. And George partially does that. He does go for Umbreon, but he doesn't double respond. He goes Umbreon plus Ludicolo here, and he may be viewing these as basically the 2 special walls that are remaining. Ludicolo in the loosest sense, I guess, is a special wall. I'm just not a Ludi fan. I never have been. I hate a Mon that is just completely, utterly ruined, worthless garbage the second it gets hit with Toxic or T-Wave. I just can't get there. It's my eternal issue with Ludicolo. But nevertheless, it is a special wall and a draft where those are very much a premium, and George is very much trying to choke his opponent out of the precious resource that is special walls. So there is the Ludicolo pick, and basically all the special walls, other than Lax, are either banned or on George's side. The Umbreon, double duty, special wall for the reasons that we just talked about, but also a direct response to a dude who just took 2 Psychics in Slowbro and Alakazam, and if he happens to catch the Gengar or the Starmie or whatever with a Pursuit Umbreon, even better. It'll be good in those matchups too. I think that Umbreon is going to be a good pick against what Arctic has, and yeah, I like these picks. George, like I said, by and large, I think is a very good drafter. I don't like the Dugtrio pick, but I won't keep going back to that. But pretty much I've agreed with damn near every single thing that George has done. I really do think he's a very good drafter. And yeah, it's hard to... It really, I mean, when I'm doing this, it really is more about just talking out loud and giving you guys my thoughts and explanations and such, rather than critiquing. There just isn't that much to critique. When they're this far, these guys are just good. They know what they're doing. Good drafts, good picks, all that, and just a matter of waiting to see how they build and see what matchups they get and letting it all play out. But clearly, very, very good at this part of the tournament. On the flip side, we've got Miltank and Armaldo coming down from Arctic. The Armaldo might be, so George can't take that for the sake of countering his Lax, and I mean, yeah, of note, the spinners right now are lacking for George. He just has the Claydol. The Donphan that we discussed has not been grabbed, which is kind of surprising when you both need a spinner and need a little bit against Cheetar. So I'm surprised that that hasn't been prioritized a little bit more for George. He may simply not think it's good, and I mean, he's not wrong, but this might be the time to grab Donphan if you even a little bit have respect for that Mon. Miltank, on the other end, like I said, has been a fire counter by and large throughout the tour. It's actually a really good Charizard answer, believe it or not, so that might be part of why that pick was made. There's also a distinct lack of Bell for Arctic. Again, Smeargle doesn't count, so basically the only thing that can learn it is Miltank. And yeah, he's got a lot of things that don't really want to get paralyzed or Will-O-Wisp or what have you, so probably pretty good to have a Bell user, just as an in general. I think Miltank rather, is a nice Gloomon that you can kind of throw on any team. Let's see, I'm looking a little bit ahead here, and I think some picks might have gotten missed here. Let me see. I'm just going to have to check. Yeah, somewhere on the tree we're missing some picks here. Let me scroll down because there's only 3 more picks recorded on the tree, meaning, and apparently my graphics driver is ready to update, but apparently something didn't get recorded. Let me just scroll down the old-fashioned way and try to not delay this too much more than it needs to be. Let me see here. So we got the Dragonite Regirock. Yep, we got the Slowbro Zam. Umbreon Ludicolo, Miltank Armaldo. Okay, so Gardevoir Tauros here are getting picked. I think they actually... No, they actually messed up, I think. I think that they... Yeah, they only... This is actually incomplete. I'm going to have to address this after. I'm just going to actually speed through the end of this draft because I didn't realize that we had this situation. But so it's going to be Gardevoir and Tauros for George, and then it's going to be Espeon for Arctic. But these guys incorrectly believed that they were done, and then they stopped drafting at this point, and they started scheduling. I guess nobody was keeping proper track, but they're actually missing 2 picks each. That being said, there's just no way that I'm going to go back and re-record this, or I don't know how to edit this. I'm just not. So this is what the video is going to be. I'm going to immediately after this address both of these guys and let them know that they're missing 2 picks each. And I'm not exactly clear how we're going to handle that. I think I will basically have Arctic pick a second poke as if he took Espeon and something else, and then we're going to proceed as normal, and then I'll have George pick his final 2, and then we'll have Arctic pick his final 1, and we'll move along from there. It's unfortunate because they obviously might be relevant. If it is a Dawn fan or what have you, it might be relevant, these last picks, but there's just nothing I can do right now. This is all that they did. Like I said, they made a mistake. I will address that after, but we just have to look at the information that we have. And as expected, it is very competitive, and both players are good at this and have drafted well and have good squads. If I had to pick a winner, I think, as you guys know, I've been complimenting him throughout the draft. I think I like George's position just a little bit better, but if I had to take a guess, I would assume that Arctic is the better ADV player. He has really looked good in this tour. He outplayed the crap out of Gang in Game 1. He just outmaneuvered him and made him look like an absolute chump, and it just gives you a preview of what Arctic is capable of in this format. He is a beastly opponent as a player. George is no slouch, but if we're just like looking for little nitpicky advantages, maybe Arctic is the better player, maybe. But I think I like George's draft a little bit better. I will let you guys know at least when we get into the games themselves. I will let you know in that video what the hell these final 4 Pokemon are. It's unfortunate that this is happening in the semifinals, but it's just an honest mistake that they made. Shit happens. And like I said, I will absolutely let you guys know what the outcome ends up being. But as it stands, I think that I like George's position better. And you guys can let me know in the comment section whether or not you agree. But that's going to be all for now. To be continued. And I will see you guys in the next video. Hit that like button, please. And thank you for watching.